Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. So, I posted a story ages and ages ago about how a woman ran over my foot at Walmart with a motorized cart. After this happened, she was banned from our local Walmart and from a few in the area. First of all, I'm gonna update on my injured foot. I was just fine. Lots and lots of bruising and the occasional pain still, but I did take a little break and stayed off of it. I'm all healed now. Second, guess who managed to show her face again? Crazy lady Olivia, and I guess she figured out the easy trick of changing her appearance a bit and came with someone else and went back in. No issues. My Walmart is usually good about this kind of stuff, but I guess not this time. Third, this was not very recent. This was around when the virus was starting to become apparent, and before all the stores were shutting down and people were self-isolating. And of course, I just so happened to be there again, with my blue lanyard, a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt. I was shopping around, picking up a few unnecessary objects. I saw her staring at me at one point and waved, earning no reaction other than a scoff. I knew she looked familiar, but I couldn't place her face. I work 3 jobs, and I see about a bazillion different faces a day, and have trouble remembering unless I see that person more than a few times. What I didn't notice for a while, I'm unobservant AF, was that she was following me. For how long, I don't know, but I noticed I was seeing her everywhere. The auto center, office supplies, dairy, baking supplies, even toys. I didn't know what she wanted from me. She had another woman with her too. Dark-haired, bob-cut, dark makeup, and a t-shirt with jeans and heels. She just had this dark scowl on her face as they followed me. I didn't recognize her either, until I heard Olivia's voice. That horribly shrill voice that haunted my nightmares when my foot hurt and sent chills down my spine and dogs running. We were in the craft aisle, where I was looking for a specific type of paint. I noticed them again, and I guess I looked a little too long. Olivia turned to who I will call the entitled lady and grabbed a paintable sign at random. Olivia, loudly, "Look at this, Karen, doesn't this look just perfect?" That made my brain do a 360. Dear gods, why was she here? She wasn't supposed to be here. Karen, "Oh Mom, it's great," she turned to me. "Isn't this just wonderful?" I gave a quick nod, grabbing the next best thing to what I needed. Needed matte fabric paint if you're curious. I grabbed Slick instead, and started to leave. They kept following me, and I grabbed a pair of jeans and hid in a change room. It felt like an eternity waiting for the door to be unlocked, but luckily, Olivia's scooter got stuck. I sat on the bench and waited to see if I lost them, but suddenly, bang bang bang, I couldn't help but scream as the flimsy door to the changing room nearly fell off its hinge. Karen, get out here, we know who you are. You owe my mother for what you did. Bang bang bang. I just sat in the corner and watched in horror as the door fell to the ground. I had to put my hands up to catch it and push it away, otherwise it would have landed on my head. She looked at the ripped-apart wall from where the hinges had been ripped off, and she shrugged, before climbing over and getting in my face. Karen, you will be coming with me. You owe my mother compensation for getting her banned. Me, shrinking into the corner, no I won't. Leave me alone, your mother shouldn't be here if she's banned. I probably shouldn't have said that, because it more than likely prompted what happened next, but I've never been one to say the right thing. Karen grabbed me by my hair and pulled me out of the changing room, pulling me over to Olivia, who was sitting there looking smug. Karen literally threw me on the ground by pushing on my head and letting me go. Karen, apologize now. I sat there shaking, and both women started shouting again, screaming that I owed them. Thankfully, this didn't last too long, as the associate who was posted at the changing room. They never stuck around long once someone was in the change room, or if no one was around, and another worker came over, separating the 3 of us. While the associate was helping me off the floor, Olivia actually got up from her motorized scooter and tried to lunge at me. I held my hand out so that it caught her and pushed her back. She started screaming about how I assaulted her, and one of the associates pretty much told her to shut up and wait for the police. Well, they showed up, and since there were a few security cameras nearby, Of all the things, this Walmart is concerned with things being stolen via changing room tricks. And a few witnesses, including the poor lady in the room next to me, who was so scared that someone was coming for her next. Apparently, when the door fell, the corner of the door cracked the wall to her room. And due to what happened last time, and even despite how I usually react to these kinds of things, I pressed charges. Both women went away for multiple things: assault, destruction of property, trespassing, etc., etc. Hopefully, I won't have to have this kind of thing happen again. Having to re-meet the entitled people in my life might be worse than meeting more. So about 10 years ago, I was a corpsman in the U.S. Navy, medical personnel for the Navy and Marine Corps, stationed overseas in a tropical paradise. At the time, I was the second most senior enlisted sailor in our department at a small, forward-deployed hospital. Part of my duties included being ready to medevac psych patients at a moment's notice, so I always had a medevac mission bag in my barracks room ready to go. Some details have been deliberately changed to protect the anonymity of my patient. Anyways, one day while I was on liberty, not on duty, I got one of those "you leave in 2 hours" phone calls, so off to the hospital I went, my trusty bag on my back. It was there that I was told how weird this medevac was to be. I was flying commercially to the U.S. with my patient, instead of hopping on an Air Force flight, and their mother. Oh, by the way, the mother just happens to be an entitled junior officer. Great. I get all my paperwork together, gather my party, patient and mother, and grab a duty driver to take us to the local civilian airport. Oh, and while we are all dressed in civilian attire, it is important to note that I am 100% on duty and acting officially in my capacity as a non-commissioned officer in the U.S. Navy Hospital Corps. The mother, however, is 100% not on duty or acting in an official capacity. This becomes very important later. On the way there, the kid is really sweet, but is clearly recovering from a first psychotic break and has a lifetime of therapy, medication, and hospitalizations ahead. This kid has my sympathy, and besides, the kid is my patient. The mother, on the other hand, is clearly self-absorbed and is on her electronic devices or nagging the duty driver, who I know and is an excellent defensive driver, or is just in general complaining about anything she can. Whatever, I can tune her out and do my job. It wouldn't be the first or last time in my career I had to ignore a petulant junior officer and just get my job done. The trouble started almost immediately after checking in at the airport. She turned to me, cleared her throat, and in a tone that suggested that she was in charge said, "You need to get my bag." Without hesitation, I replied, "No, ma'am. Our flight leaves in 20 minutes. We're going to the gate now." With that, I turned and began to escort my patient to the security screening area. She stammers out some kind of, "Excuse me," protest, but I didn't quite catch it because I genuinely didn't give a damn. My mission was getting my sick patient to a higher level of care, not playing enlisted butler to an entitled officer. That seemed to get her to back off because we got to our layover destination without incident. We board our international flight, and the kid wants the window seat, and mother wants to sit beside the kid. Fine, I sit behind them and we take off. The flight is going smoothly. I give the kid their medication after the in-flight meal, and the kid and mother settle in for a movie. It was when the stewardess was handing out booze that things started to really go sideways. The mother tried to give her very sick kid who is on an atypical antipsychotic medication a Jack and Coke. Without hesitation, I reached forward between the seats and snatched that stuff up. She turned to glare at me and chew me out, but I didn't even give her a chance. I cut her off with my super serious officer tone and glare. I'm not ashamed to admit I practiced it before my first deployment, and state flatly, "Ma'am, not only is my patient is underage, but they're very sick and are on some pretty serious medication. If there are two things that just plain don't mix, it's alcohol and psychotropic medication. Respectfully, ma'am, I simply will not allow this. I appreciate your compliance." Her face twists in rage and confusion. I could tell that she had never been spoken to like this by a lowly enlisted person, and she was trying to figure out what to say to me. Finally, she said, "I didn't want to have to pull rank, but," again, I immediately cut her off. "Ma'am, this is my mission. It was explained to you that you are not in charge here, and the skipper is allowing you to tag along as a humane gesture. I am calling the shots here. This is your kid and you want the best for my patient. I get it, but the best thing you can do right now is let me do my job and get him to the next treatment facility, without incident. Our commanding officer placed me in charge, and if the patient shows up to the next facility, having drank alcohol, it will be my head on the chopping block, not to mention that you are putting my patient at risk. Your child could have a genuine medical emergency tens of thousands of feet in the air over the open ocean. So ma'am, if you pull something like this again, I will report it. Thank you for your compliance, ma'am." You see, Reddit, in the U.S. military, positional authority is way more important than your actual rank. This is why an E2 can and will prevent a 3-star general from entering a secure facility without the proper credentials. It doesn't matter that the 3-star is like God to this E2, because not even a 3-star gets to access this facility without a proper military identification card, sir. This means that since the patient was released to my custody, and since the chain of command placed me in charge of this mission, my positional authority simply trumped her rank, and even her status as the kid's parent, and I had the paperwork to prove it to any authority. Back to the flight. So after being told that she wasn't in charge, she scowls at me and tells me that when we land, she's going to call the cops or something. I don't really care, as I lean back and begin documenting the interaction for my own personal CYA. Anyway, we landed and there weren't any cops called or anything, so whatever she said was an empty threat. We are about to go through U.S. Customs, when she insists that she go through Customs first, then her kid, then me. The Jack and Coke incident is still fresh on my mind. I'm convinced she's going to try to pull some shady nonsense, so I shut her down. I informed her that in order to maintain her kid's security and health, I had to go first, followed by her kid, then her. She protests, and the protests start to get us stared at. Somehow we made it through Customs without her or the kid taking flight or without any of us getting detained. Y'all, she whined and complained loudly the entire wait. I was seriously getting concerned that we were gonna get detained. Nightmare almost over. We get through Customs and we head to get the rental car. All I have to do is get the patient to the next medical facility, give a report, turn over effects, and I'm done. I get in the car, load everyone up, and then the mother exclaims, "I left my purse." She begins half flailing and freaking out and jumps out of the car. She tells me that I am to wait until she returns. Now, I'm not some kind of special forces ninja or some nonsense, but I have been deployed and I have seen real people get seriously hurt and had to treat those injuries. I've been in real danger, and I would eventually develop PTSD from these experiences. It was then and there that I decided playtime with this delusional officer was over. I turn and look at her through the open car door, and this time, I don't mask my frustration with this woman. "Ma'am, I have been on duty and awake for nearly 21 hours. We have a 45-minute drive ahead of us. Then I have to give a report and turn over medications, medical records, and personal effects. I have at least 2 more hours of work ahead of me, before I can get some sleep and fly back tonight. Ma'am, there is no way you are holding this up any more than you already have. This vehicle will leave in 10 minutes with or without you." She stammers out that she will call the police on me for kidnapping her kid. I tell her to go right ahead, but that won't change that she now has 9 minutes and 45 seconds to get her purse. At this point, even the kid chimes in with, "Mom, stop trying to control everything. This guy has taken great care of me, and I'm really tired. Can't we just hurry up?" With that, she storms off and miraculously makes it back with her purse in time. I take them to the hospital with her, silently fuming and furiously tapping away at her phone nonstop. Turnover gets done. I bid the kid goodbye and the mother ignores me as I leave. Sweet, sweet sleep. Oh, it's not over. Fast forward a week and I find out that the mother has filed a formal complaint against me. To avoid another long story, I'll tell you that the executive officer shredded it and chewed her out. Once I explained everything that happened and backed it up with official documentation. I don't know what happened to her or the kid, but I never saw either of them again. I'm a 33-year-old woman, and I recently gave birth 2 months earlier than expected. Thankfully, both baby and I are doing great, and we're finally home. As you can imagine, having a premature baby meant baby needed a rather long stay in the neonatal intensive care unit, NICU. Now that we're home, and I've had some time to process everything, I wanted to share a moment of malicious compliance that brought some much-needed levity to a really scary experience. One of the most important things for a baby, especially preemies, is skin-to-skin time. This is where mothers or fathers will be either topless or open their shirts to cuddle their infant. Baby struggled with jaundice, so our skin-to-skin time was very limited at first because of the light therapy. We had been moved to a new location in the NICU, right next to another baby, and across from 2 others. A standard practice in the NICU is monitoring the baby's breathing, heart rate, and oxygen levels. These monitors look like old-school tube TVs, approximately 16 inches by 16 inches, and can display babies in other areas as well if the nurses need. So I'm new to this little care area, and I'm getting ready to set up the hospital-provided screen so I can get my skin-to-skin time. I realize I may end up blocking the monitor for the baby next to me from the nurse. I ask the nurse if she can still see or if my setup is blocking anything for her. Obviously, I don't want to interfere with the care of another patient. She tells me everything is good, so I settle in for some much-needed snuggles. Not even 10 minutes later, I feel someone in my space and look up to see a woman glaring down at me. Once I've made eye contact, Karen starts in on me while I'm topless and holding baby, so I'm feeling very vulnerable. She claims I'm blocking the nurse from caring for her baby. When I try to explain that I asked before setting things up, she refuses to listen and continues to lecture me, getting more aggressive and angry about how I'm causing her baby not to receive appropriate care and that I'm pushing her out of the care area. After all the emotional stress and frustration of being in the hospital, I finally snap. I look at the nurse and tell her to take away the screen. The nurse is horrified and starts saying, "But your privacy." Me. It would seem my privacy and modesty don't matter as much as Karen's comfort. Get rid of the screen. This pisses off Karen even more as she realizes she'll have to spend the next hour staring at my topless self. She gets very annoyed and uncomfortable, especially when the doctors come around for their rounds. Both doctors get flustered and try to insist I get a new screen. Doctor: "Ma'am, we can get you a new screen for privacy." Me: "According to my neighbor here, my privacy doesn't matter, so we all get to be uncomfortable. If looks could kill, I'd be dead." The doctors don't want to deal with it, and the nurses who have to deal with it are laughing quite a bit. They then bring the screen back out and try to show Karen that they can totally see all her baby's stats on any monitor. So there was no reason for this outburst. I wish I could say this was the last time she freaked out about this. But she pulled this same kind of stunt almost every time I tried to snuggle my baby until her baby was finally discharged a week later. But seeing the look of shock on her face when I forced everyone to look at my chest is probably going to make me giggle every time I think of it. That week was quite a challenge, and Karen made it even more difficult with her constant complaints. Each time I prepared for my precious skin-to-skin time, I braced myself for another confrontation. Sure enough, she was there, ready to pounce. "Karen, you're still blocking the nurse. I don't care what they say, you're in the way." Me: "I've already explained and the nurses have shown you they can see everything. Please, just let me have this time with my baby." Karen: "You're being selfish and inconsiderate." Each time the nurses would reassure me and show Karen again that there was no issue with their ability to monitor her baby, and each time Karen would huff and puff but ultimately have to accept it. The other parents in the NICU started to notice her behavior too. One day, another mom across the room chimed in. "Other mom, Karen, give it a rest. She's not doing anything wrong. We're all trying to take care of our babies here. Karen. Mind your own business, this is about my baby's care. Other mom. It's all our business when you make a scene every day. Leave her alone. Karen. This isn't over. But it was clear that the support from other parents and the consistent backing from the nurses were starting to wear her down. The nurses continued to laugh about the situation, albeit discreetly, and some of them even started calling it the great screen debacle behind Karen's back. Finally, the day came when Karen's baby was discharged. The atmosphere in the NICU lightened considerably. I could finally enjoy my skin-to-skin time without interruption. The nurses even gave me a little extra attention that day, knowing how much I had been through. Nurse, you handled that really well. Some people just can't see beyond their own issues. Me, thanks, it wasn't easy, but I'm glad it's over. The experience taught me a lot about standing my ground, even when feeling vulnerable. And now, every time I think about Karen's reaction to my malicious compliance, I can't help but chuckle. It's a small, funny victory in an otherwise tough situation. We're home now, and baby is thriving. I'm grateful for the support of the nurses and other parents who stood by me. And while I hope I never have to deal with someone like Karen again, I know I can handle it if I do. This is such a mess. Many people here commented about what my cousin would probably do in retaliation, and I was naive about it because they were exactly right. I last posted on Reddit about my cousin who gave me a junk beach cruiser bike from his parents' backyard when my mountain bike got stolen. I cleaned up and fixed the beach cruiser, and then suddenly my cousin wanted me to either pay him $60 for it or give it back because he wanted to sell it after I made it look nice. But the rest of the family, including his parents, basically told him to grow up when he tried to get them involved. Then he found out about my "Am I the a-hole" post. One of his friends apparently saw it and told him, either here or on a podcast or something. But word spread around. The whole family found out because my cousin ranted to them. But none of them were angry with me. They actually sympathized with me for even feeling like I had to make the post in the first place, when my cousin was so clearly in the wrong. My cousin ended up freaking out over it and confronting me on my way home from work. This time he demanded even more money for the bike. He said that since I love Reddit so much, he was taking an a-hole tax for humiliating him, and the cost of the bike was now $80. Cousin, you humiliated me. You owe me $80 for the bike now. Me. You're acting like a grifter. The bike was hardly worth anything. I put in effort to make it rideable while you let it rot in your parents' backyard for years. It was junk when I started and I made it work. Cousin, I don't care. I want the money now or I'll take the bike back whether you like it or not. Me, I'm done with this. I tried to ride off, but he grabbed me and pulled both me and the bike over before I could get away. Me, what the heck, man? He actually slugged me in the face. It didn't break my nose, but it really hurt and made me bleed. Then he took my bike and rode off with it. I'm older than my cousin by 2 years and taller too, but he's built sturdier than me since his father is a bit husky and strong. So he had no problem knocking me down and robbing me. Someone came over to help me up, and then I called the cops. Family or no family, I wasn't about to just let him get away with doing that to me. The altercation happened right in front of a shop with CCTV, which the cops later got video from. I got taken to the hospital to have my face checked, and my cousin was arrested by the police at his apartment. He had the bike there too, and had even already listed it for sale online, but took it down later. Thanks to something someone commented on my last post, I documented the serial numbers of the bike by photographing them and writing them down at home. So I got my bike back from the police without much issue. My cousin tried to tell the police the bike was still his, but I had texts on my phone from back when he said I could have it, and lots of other text evidence of the harassment that followed. Plus, his parents were there when he gave the bike to me, and the whole family knew he tried to grift me. So he surrendered it, and the bike was returned to me at the station. My boss gave me a couple of days off work to recover. The injury to my nose was thankfully minor, so I'm doing fine. My cousin didn't get off easy though. After he was arrested, he was found to have been drinking, so now he's been charged for theft, assault and underage drinking since he's not 21 yet. He called his parents to come bail him out, but they refused after finding out what he did to me. They came to see me after a couple of days and were extremely apologetic. They said they had no idea he'd do such a jerk move to me. They also said he'd been asking for money a lot lately, and was likely spending it all on his habits. None of us have any idea where he got the alcohol or what kind of long-term punishment he's in for, but I doubt he's going to get off lightly when he goes to court. I was questioned about pressing charges, but the police already have the video of the assault and theft, and my cousin is still getting charged for underage drinking. So no one is really asking me to try and speak on his behalf, and I don't really want to either. Since I waited a few days longer to post this, my cousin is now out of jail, and his parents have learned that he was also behind on rent and is now facing eviction since his lease was month to month. He was also fired from his job for being a no-show since he was stuck in jail for a few days. One of my friends works at that same place, and my cousin had already been on thin ice for bad behavior, a lot of tardiness, and repeatedly not showing up for work. So getting arrested was the last straw for his boss, and he was fired. So now he's looking at misdemeanor charges, has no job, and is getting evicted. All because he had to be a jerk and a grifter. From what my parents and his parents tell me, he acted like everything was all my fault. But his parents shut that down and chewed him out over the fact that he beat me up and stole from me. And this is karma for that. Then they made him promise to leave me alone from here on out. I've heard his parents aren't going to let him move back into his old room either. Instead, they plan on putting him up in the loft above their garage, which isn't exactly roomy, has plywood walls, and there's no AC up there for the summer heat. I went back to my routine of riding the bike to and from work, and I haven't been bothered about it anymore by any of my cousin's jerk friends. In fact, they seem to have completely distanced themselves from me and anyone else I know. So none of them made any attempt to apologize, but I don't care since I don't really know them. It's just insane that all this was over a used beach cruiser. It's not even an expensive one. I'd like to ask my cousin one day if it was worth it, but I don't want to see his face again anytime soon. This is my encounter with an entitled, crazy woman who thinks the world should always bow to her wishes. A little background. I am single, having never remarried after my wife passed away from a sudden and deadly illness. Since the pandemic hit, my grandmother, who's in her 90s, and my cousin and her mother have been living with me. I've never had any problems with them, and they help around the house as they can and even pitch in on the bills from time to time, which I appreciate. My cousin is a special needs boy with a compromised immune system, and my grandma, being old, does not have as strong an immune system as she used to. As such, when I do have to go out, I take the precaution of taking a shower when I come home and putting on a fresh set of clothing, taking care not to expose them to the worn set before I wash them. This seems necessary to me with the pandemic going on. Normally, I would order in whatever we need, but at the time this happened, I couldn't because their system was down or something. So I had to go out shopping, even though some members of my household are at higher risk. Earlier today, I decided to go shopping. Once I got to the store, I grabbed a cart and began to shop. I had been shopping for about 20 minutes when I heard someone snapping their fingers. I ignored it because I didn't work there, and was wearing jeans and a black shirt with an insane clown posse design on it. No way anyone could mistake me for an employee, or so I thought. Next thing I knew, someone yelled in my ear, "Karen, are you going to help me or not?" I jumped, exclaiming loudly, "Me, what the heck?" When I turned around, there was a Karen, short-haired, in clothes one size too small for her, large, and with a sour look on her face. She shouted again, "Karen, help me now or I'm getting you fired." Me, "I don't work here, lady. Now go bother an actual employee." She stepped back, mouth agape like she had never been shouted back at in her entire life, and wound up to slap me. I blocked her swing and said, "Me, that's one." She tried to slap me again, and I blocked it. "Me, that's two. One more and I slap you back, lady." She screamed, "Karen, I'm getting you fired," and stomped off. I yelled, "Me, don't let the doorknob hit you on the way out." As she left, I saw her shoulders jerk, as if she had gotten hit in the back, and kept going. I continued with my shopping, albeit angrily. I was done with people at the moment, and wanted to finish and get back home. An employee approached me and asked what all the yelling was about. So I told her everything. I could tell she was smirking when I told her what I said, as the crazy woman stomped off. So we chatted as I shopped, and the employee's words were helping considerably to calm me down when we heard that nasty voice again. "Karen, that's him. The one WHO wouldn't help me and threatened me when I asked for his help. I want him fired right now." The manager looked confused. "Manager, ma'am, he doesn't work here. I cannot fire customers." "Karen, yes he does. Fire him right now or I'm filing a complaint with corporate." "Manager, you're certainly welcome to do that, ma'am, but he does not work here." She lost her composure then. Her face went purple, and she charged at me, and managed to slap me this time. I normally am opposed to hitting women, but out of pure defensive instinct, I slapped her back hard enough to spin her around and knock her down. By this time, store security had arrived and restrained me, thinking I was the one who instigated the incident. The crazy woman got up off the floor and started screaming assault and demanding the police be called. In the meantime, she tried several more times to get to me and slap me again, and wound up being restrained herself. During this, the employee had been speaking to the manager over her yelling and told him what had actually happened. She had heard her demands 2 aisles away and came to investigate. Apparently, she had managed to come into the aisle in time to see her try to slap me a second time and my warning to her. When the police arrived, she went off on a profanity-laced rant, demanding I be fired and arrested, and that she was going to live off the lawsuit she intended to file. The police walked me a few feet away while she ranted and raved, and asked me what happened. So I told them, and that the footage from the security cameras would provide proof of my side of the incident. So while one listened to her side of the story, one went and checked the recordings. They came back, and one took out his cuffs while the crazy woman looked smug and said some rude things. But she was shocked when the officer told her to turn around and not resist. They had to literally drag her out of the store, kicking and screaming all the way, threatening to have their jobs and screaming how she was the victim here and more. I cannot put here because of the language. I was asked a few minutes later by one of the officers if I would like to press charges, since from viewing the recordings, it was obvious I was defending myself and did not use excessive force. Of course, I said yes. I also found out later she has harassed other shoppers before, but had never assaulted anyone. So, she's sitting in jail, having not been able to bail out, and her own family has contacted me and profusely apologized for her actions. I told them not to worry about it. They're not being held to blame for her actions. None of them are willing to pay her bail so she can get out and start her shenanigans again. I suspect there's more to it than that, but I do know she has been banned from the store for life after that incident. I went back to my routine of riding my bike to and from work, and I haven't been bothered about it anymore by any of my cousin's jerk friends. In fact, they seem to have completely distanced themselves from me and anyone else I know. None of them made any attempt to apologize, but I don't care since I don't really know them. It's just insane that all this was over a used beach cruiser. It's not even an expensive one. I'd like to ask my cousin one day if it was worth it, but I don't want to see his face again anytime soon. Once I had an experience at a hotel that still makes me shake my head. I was in town for a conference, and after a long day of meetings and networking, I finally made it back to my room around midnight. I was exhausted and looking forward to a good night's sleep. Before hitting the bed, I made sure to hang the Do Not Disturb sign on my door. I wanted to sleep in without any interruptions. The next morning, around 7 a.m., I was jolted awake by a loud knocking on my door. Groggy and confused, I stumbled out of bed and opened the door a crack, just enough to see who it was. Maid. Housekeeping, I need to clean the room. Me. Rubbing my eyes, it's too early. The sign says Do Not Disturb, I'm not ready to check out. Maid. But you're checking out today, and the hotel is fully booked for the next 2 nights because of the local event. I need to clean the room now. I glanced at the sign on the back of the door, which clearly stated that checkout time was 11 a.m. I pointed it out to her. Me. Look, it says checkout time is 11 a.m. I'm planning to sleep for a couple more hours. The maid seemed irritated but finally walked away. I sighed in relief, thinking I could get back to sleep. But an hour later, at 8 a.m., the knocking started again. I could hardly believe it. I dragged myself out of bed and opened the door to see the same maid standing there. Maid, you need to hurry up. I have to clean this room. Me. Frustrated, I told you already. I'm not checking out until later. I still have a few hours. She huffed and walked away again. I was now wide awake and thoroughly annoyed. I decided to ignore her if she came back. Sure enough, a few minutes later, there was more loud banging on my door. This time, I didn't answer. Then I heard the sound of a key in the lock, and the door tried to open, but the chain lock I had put on from the inside stopped it. Immediately, I grabbed the phone and called the front desk. Front desk, good morning, how can I help you? Me. Angrily, your maid just tried to enter my room. I've told her twice that I'm not ready to check out yet. The sign says 11 a.m. and she's insisting I need to leave now. What's going on? Front desk, sir, checkout time for today has been changed to 9 a.m. You were informed of this when you checked in. Me. Outraged, no, I wasn't. No one told me anything about an early checkout, and your sign says 11 a.m. If you charge me for an extra night, I'll just stay the extra night. There was a brief pause. Front desk, all right, we'll give you an extra hour. Please be out by 10 a.m. Me, fine. By now, I was wide awake and very annoyed. I tried to go back to sleep, but it was no use. At exactly 9 a.m., the maid was back, banging on the door again. Maid, you need to get out now. Me, yelling through the door, I'll be out by 10 a.m. like the front desk agreed. Stop bothering me. At this point, any hope of getting more rest was gone. I packed my things and got ready to leave. As I opened the door at exact 10 a.m., there she was, waiting. She didn't say anything, just pushed past me into the room. Her attitude was beyond rude. Feeling petty, I decided to teach her a small lesson. I grabbed her cleaning cart, wheeled it down the hall to the elevator, and took it down to the parking garage. I pushed it about 10 feet away from the elevator against a wall and then went back up to check out. As I handed over my key at the front desk, the clerk looked at me with a forced smile. Front desk, we hope you enjoyed your stay. Me. Sarcastically, oh, it was memorable, all right. I left the hotel, shaking my head. I knew the maid was just doing her job, but there was no excuse for her rudeness and constant interruptions. 7 a.m. is way too early to be banging on doors, especially when the Do Not Disturb sign is up. She could have asked nicely or explained the situation instead of being so pushy. And that's the story of the most entitled maid I ever encountered. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences and opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.